While it's true that some of Bakura's most iconic Yu-Gi-Oh cards, like Destiny Board, were not very good in the TCG, he played plenty of other cards that saw tons of play at tournaments. In today's video, we're going to be going over the best cards in Bakura's deck that actually did see play in the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG at tournaments. If you guys are new to the series and want to check out the previous episodes, make sure to check out the new playlist that I put together that has all of the previous discussions. Before we start talking about cards though, let me tell you about today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. This game has everything: awesome champions, insane boss fights, exciting animations, and more. Raid has millions of players and it's updated all the time, so you'll never run out of stuff to do. There are 13 different factions in the game that you can use, all with their own unique champions and abilities. My favorite faction so far has been the Skinwalkers. While I was unlocking champions, I got very lucky and pulled the epic champion Flesh Terror. He's like the scarier cousin of Battleox and Bullblader, and he absolutely crushes my opponents. I especially like the Lay Low skill that can hit all of my enemies at once because it's good at clearing out multiple targets with ease. So far, I've been having a lot of fun with the campaign, but there's tons of other modes as well, like arena and dungeon battles. Last month, Raid got its biggest update ever, the Doom Tower. It's a giant tower with tons of floors, a bunch of secret rooms, and extremely difficult bosses to try and beat. If you want to give Raid a try, now is the best time too, because they're giving away a ton of great stuff. By clicking the link in the description below, you'll get a free Void Champion, an XP booster, 50 gems, some energy refills, and even an Ancient Shard. The Void Champion that you can get for free is Bulwark, and he's going to be a huge help in the Doom Tower. Make sure to check your inbox too, because you'll find extra rewards for the next 30 days. Of course, you can find me in game with the name Dzeeff, and I even have a clan you can join. Thank you Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring today's video. Like many older anime characters, Bakura played plenty of currently banned cards, things like Premature Burial and Pot of Greed and Change of Heart. This isn't super surprising, but in this case, Change of Heart was actually part of the plot in one of those episodes, which was pretty interesting. He initially played sort of an anti-meta control deck, so let's talk about a couple of those cards. We saw Morphing Jar, for example, a card that we saw all the time in old school Yu-Gi-Oh! This is one of the many jar cards that saw play back in the day. Morphing Jar forces each player to discard their entire hand and draw 5 new cards. The idea with this card in old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that you would try to play it when you had few cards in your hand and your opponent had a lot of cards in their hand, to hopefully get rid of some of their better cards that they were holding on to for later. This card was very prominent for a long time. It was banned for a while, but it is currently back in the game, and while it's probably too slow for modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It was good for a very long time. In that same control deck, we also saw Maneater Bug, a great iconic old school monster that a lot of players fondly remember because it's able to take out pretty much whatever threat you need to remove. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like this card is good right now or it's been good for any time in the last 10 years, but way back in the day this was a very strong monster. One card he used that you've probably seen if you've ever played against a chain burn deck was Just Desserts. So this thing inflicts 500 damage to your opponent for every single monster that they control. It obviously combos quite well with cards like Ojama Trio to do tons of damage to the opponent. Just Desserts has consistently been one of the most popular burn cards in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and even to this day, if you play against a burn deck, you will probably see a few copies of this card, if not the full playset. Next up, we have Doom Caliber Knight, and this is one of 2 cards that I'm going to talk about in today's video that were normal monsters in the anime, but in the TCG had really powerful effects. So Doom Caliber Knight was a prize card back in 2008, and it was very, very expensive because of this, and it got a reprint eventually, and people really did enjoy playing this card because, especially back in 2008, this card was pretty difficult for most decks to play around. Doom Caliber Knight is a level 4 Dark Fiend monster monster with 1900 attack points and 1800 defense. It says cannot be special summoned during either player's turn. If a monster effect is activated, tribute this face-up card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that monster. This card has really high stats, and that meant that your opponent would have to waste a good effect to actually remove this card. And while it did force the user to not use any monster effects first, because that would mean that they were losing their monster effect and their Doom Caliber Knight, oftentimes that drawback didn't really matter. Doom Caliber Knight was played in meta decks and anti-meta decks for a long time. It was certainly worthy of its prize card status. The second normal monster that was made into an effect monster was Goblin Zombie. Also released in 2008, Goblin Zombie came out of Phantom Darkness, not a prize card this time, and this is a very interesting searcher card, especially for that time period. Goblin Zombie is a level 4 dark zombie monster with 1100 attack points and 1050 defense. It says when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, send the top card of their deck to the graveyard. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, add one zombie monster with 1200 or less defense from your deck to your hand. One thing to note here is that search ability is not an optional effect, so even though it does say when, it always works because you don't have a choice of whether or not you want to use it or not. That means that Goblin Zombie does trigger if you use it for a tribute summon or a synchro summon or whatever, and that is one of the best parts about this card. The other good part is that this card pretty much searches every single good zombie monster in the game, especially for that time period. You were grabbing cards like Mizuki and eventually Zombie Master and Plague Spreader Zombie. It couldn't grab Pyramid Turtle, but other than that, it pretty much grabbed every single zombie monster that you would want to search back in the day. It's worth noting as well that Goblin Zombie is not a hard once per turn effect, which means if you can find a way to loop the same copy over and over again, or find a way to send multiple copies on the field to the graveyard, you can get a ton of searches. Goblin Zombie is a great card, and while we don't really see it so much nowadays, I think it actually was very ahead of its time. We usually did not see search cards like this back in 2008. He also played Jagen The Spiritualist, which I think is a card that has gotten better with age. It certainly had its uses back in the day. We all remember it being used with Last Turn before that card got banned, but for a lot of players, they remember this card being used in the Spellbook deck back in 2013, where you could very easily summon this card from your deck using Spellbook of Judgment. That was a very deadly combo back in 2013, especially because it was usually backed up by Spellbook of Fate, but as the years went on and we didn't have Spellbook of Judgment, Jagen still saw play, usually in side decks, but against decks like Blue Eyes, it was a good card back in 2016, and throughout the years we did see Jagen played against plenty of special summon heavy strategies. One notable advantage of this card over something like a Barrier Statue or Fossil Dyna even is that this card is actually pretty good going second, because you can discard a random card to destroy all special summoned monsters on the field. The Barrier Statues can't do that, and while Fossil Dyna can, it has to be set first, which is pretty slow. Jagen has been really good over the years in a number of decks, so it's pretty cool to see that it was used in the anime as well. And of course, I have to talk about Sengen. At this point, it is sort of like the unofficial mascot of this channel. For a long time back in old school Yu-Gi-Oh, it was pretty good just to set a Sengen and search whatever you wanted to, as long as it had less than 1500 attack, of course. This got worse as time went on and the game got faster, but with Tour Guide from the Underworld, Sengen was suddenly back at the forefront of competition. Using Tour Guide to special summon Sengen would let you make a rank 3 monster instantly, or you could pass turn without making a rank 3, and then the Sengen could search something powerful like Rescue Rabbit for next turn. Sengen was so good, in fact, that Konami actually banned it for its use with Tour Guide from the Underworld, and eventually went when it was unbanned, it got a new worse effect, which is what we have right now. Sengen is certainly not as good as it used to be, but it does still see play from time to time. The errata did hurt it quite a bit, but it's not a bad card. I have made fun of it a lot on the channel, but even with all those jokes, I did use this card to 2 topping finishes at tournaments. Anyway, that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to let me know in the comment section below which character's deck you want me to analyze in the next episode. I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.